What's going on, you guys? This is Aaron from Departures Capital, and welcome to the video. In this video, we have the pleasure of interviewing the CEO of Taat Lifestyle and Wellness, Seti Coscarella, on the recent developments within the company. As we know, guys, Taat stock has absolutely been on fire, so we'll let Seti give you guys those updates. Before we dive into this video, last but not least, there's two things I ask from you. The first thing is, if you do support me in the channel and all the videos, then kindly explode that like button. It takes 1 second of your time and it helps my videos so very much. Along with, if you are a new viewer to the channel, you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, but you appreciate constant, steady updates in the markets, a nice flow of new and exciting companies just like Taat, or you want to learn a little bit more about investing, then of course don't forget to cash that subscribe button and ring the market bell for notifications. And let's get straight into this awesome interview. What's going on, guys? This is Aaron with Purchase Capital. We're here with Seti Coscarella, CEO of Taat Lifestyle and Wellness. How are you doing today, Seti?
I'm doing great, Aaron. How are you doing?
Excited to have you back. Since the last time we spoke, you're fresh out of Philip Morris, brand new to Taat. Stock was in the low 80-cent level, and today it just cleared $2, as we can see. It's been pretty awesome. So I'm not trying to get you to brag or anything, but tell me what you've done to drive this early stage success.
Well, listen, I think that for us, trying to approach this in a way that is more corporate than craft is important. So taking some of the learnings that I had from working at a big company, and when we start looking at things like the patent or how we're going to commercialize and what kind of manufacturing deals we'd be able to go out and do and the pricing that we're able to get, and you start layering these things over on top of each other, and it just becomes this bit of a domino effect where you hit one and that helps you hit the next and the next and the next and the next. And, before you know it, you really start rolling. So from when I came in initially, I took a look at where the business was at, where the product was at. And I think we were able to make some tremendous improvements to what was otherwise a great product to begin with. So I think we're even better now than we were before. That process was novel, so it allowed us to get a patent, or at least apply for a patent. So we're hoping to receive it. I think it takes about 18 months. And then really start isolating on commercialization and how we get the product on the shelf. So we want to make sure that there's certain key metrics that are hit, and key milestones along the way that we're able to knock off as we grow, and ensure that in the markets that we go into, if anybody wants to find Taat, they can always find Taat. And then as you start to build that out, I always look at it like it's like building a fire, right? You go into a market with some kindling and you see if you can get it to start burning. Then as it starts to burn, you throw some twigs on it, then some bigger sticks, and then you get a log. And before you know it, you have this bonfire roaring. As you get that bonfire roaring, or just before you get that bonfire roaring, you take that kindling, which is basically your launch playbook, and then you drop it in other markets. And then that starts the fire burning there. And the same sort of process applies. So you're always taking the learnings from the markets you're in to apply to the markets you're going to. And it gives you this great way to build a commercialization playbook, so that you're applying learnings in real time. You're able to figure out what works and what doesn't very quickly. Because we're still in, I guess you could say, a startup phase, we're nimble enough to make those changes that we're not being weighed down by our own corporate structure. So I think it really gives us a leg up in terms of figuring out exactly how this is going to work. And I've always said this, commercialization is most people think it's a key-based lock, but it's not. It's a combination lock. So you have to hit the right things at the right time so that you unlock the market. And that's what I think we're going to be extraordinarily well positioned to do as we get the product into the market.
Very exciting time for you guys. So on the topic of commercialization, you and Tim Cockram have been talking a lot about commercialization. Can you tell us a bit more about what that term means specifically in the context of the tobacco category?
Sure. So when you look at commercialization, you can have a great product, which we do, but then it becomes an exercise in getting the product on the shelf and then figuring out how to communicate the value proposition to consumers so that you can get the product off of the shelf. So for us, it's always been an exercise in figuring out what the appropriate price point is first, and then building a brand around Taat so that we can actually get people to believe in something that's more than the sum of its parts, right? If you look at something like Marlboro, right? We sell, and this is why I've never been huge on trying to position this as a hemp cigarette or a CBD play, because it's not about that, right? Taat is as much a hemp and CBD story as Marlboro is a tobacco and nicotine story. And that's really the way that I look at it. Because if you think about Marlboro or any other brand, I mean Coca-Cola or Budweiser beer, it's not about the beer. It's not about the fizzy brown sugar water. It's about something much bigger than that. And I think that's how we're approaching this product and the market as a whole. So on the commercialization side, in terms of getting the product on the shelf, it's a function of building the relationships with the distributors, figuring out the specific markets that you're going to want to go into first, ensuring that the product is available on the shelf, that if somebody goes out and buys the product, that they're going to be able to consistently find that product either there or at another point of sale, and really tackling it in a similar way that tobacco companies would tackle it in terms of going into places where people would normally buy cigarettes, because that's where people buy cigarettes.
Exactly. So specifically for Beyond Tobacco, what will commercialization consist of?
Well, I don't want to go into too much detail on exactly what we're going to do. I like to sort of show people what I'm going to do as opposed to tell them what I'm going to do before I go out and do it. But I think I answered a lot of that in the previous question as well, where again, it's an exercise in figuring out how to get the product on the right shelves at the right price, and then work with consumers through a variety of different tactical marketing initiatives so that we can get the product in their hands and they can try it. Now, I'm fully confident that with the product that we have now, when a smoker were to try it, they wouldn't experience a difference at all from smoking a regular cigarette. In fact, I'm fairly confident that they would smoke this and actually prefer it from a taste standpoint and an experience standpoint to a cigarette. And then as they start to feel the difference, I think the vast majority of them will likely choose our product over what they were smoking before.
Awesome. So, that's interesting what you just said. Building a brand and a preference is the name of the game. Where does product quality fit into that? Doesn't a quality product create preference in and of itself?
It does. I mean, listen, you need to have a great product. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed. But having a great product alone is not enough, right? I've always kind of used these similar examples. I mean, if you take a look at McDonald's, right? Mm-hmm. McDonald's does not make the best tasting hamburger by a country mile, but man, do they sell more than anybody else. Budweiser is the same thing, right? I think you'd find many people that wouldn't tell you that Budweiser is the greatest tasting beer in the history of beer, but they sell more of them than anybody else. Yeah. So, I think it helps having a great product with the mindset that we're looking to build this global brand. And when you put those two things together, I don't think you're able to be stopped, because you can work the consumer to get them to try your product. And then in addition to building the brands that have an affinity, you're also delivering a product that they would otherwise enjoy consuming. And that's why I think you put these two things together and you've got a very winning formula.
Agreed. So before this interview, you showed me an old interview with Beyond Meat CEO Ethan Brown, in which he shared where Beyond Meat was back in 2013. I put the link in the description of this video for the viewers to check out after this interview. So I saw some interesting correlations between their story and Taat's story. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So if you take a look at Beyond Meat in the beginning, I mean, they worked for a number of years on creating a product that would mimic meat almost entirely. If Beyond Meat came out and said that we're just a veggie burger, I don't think anybody would have really cared. I mean, veggie burgers had existed for decades before Beyond Meat came along. But where Beyond Meat, I think, took that category into another level was that they figured out how to make plant proteins respond and behave like meat proteins, so that the bite of the product was similar to meat. They seasoned and spiced it so that the taste of the product tasted like meat. They figured out how when you cook it, it sizzles like meat. they figured out how to make it bleed like meat with beet juice. So they didn't approach it in saying we have a better veggie burger. They came out and said we have a viable substitute for meat. And I think that's exactly what it is that we're doing. And that's why it's not a story of, you know, the base that we use, right? Like Beyond Meat doesn't talk about using a split pea and bean curd protein for making their meat, because that's not really the important piece. The important piece is that they've been able to create a product that behaves exactly like meat, but that isn't meat. And I think that's the same story that we have here. You know, it's not about the hemp that we put in there. It's not about the CBD. It's about taking an organic base, a plant-based material, and transforming it into something that tastes exactly like something else, that is ultimately better for the consumer because it doesn't get you addicted to nicotine, and in fact can help you leave that addiction to nicotine behind. Now, when it came to commercializing with Beyond Meat, they initially went to where people would normally buy their product. So they went into fast food places initially to launch, right? If you take a look even in Canada, you know, one of the first places that took them was A&W. And the success at A&W was extraordinary. And on the back of that success, then they were able to get into Starbucks. They were able to get into Tim Hortons. I think they ran some tests with McDonald's. Then they started getting into a wide variety of different restaurant establishments because they were able to provide the product in places where people that would otherwise consume the product could easily buy it. You didn't want it so that you'd have to go to a Whole Foods in order to find Beyond Meat. You wanted to basically democratize it and make it available to anybody who would otherwise buy meat. And at this point, you'll see a Beyond Meat in every grocery store that you go to. And that's the exact same thing, and exactly the same way that we're looking to approach the Beyond Tobacco product. We want it available in places where people who buy cigarettes could otherwise find it, so that they're not going to have to go into specialty stores or walk the streets trying to find the one-off retailer that may or may not carry it. You really want to make that experience as easy as possible. Otherwise, it just becomes a very challenging thing to commercialize at scale. So I thought that it was a very interesting interview, and that was taken, I think, just as they were launching. And I mean, you can see where Beyond Meat is now. And again, I've always kind of been the person that likes to learn either from other people's successes and failures. That way you can figure out what works, and you don't have to spend the money to figure out what doesn't, because you've already seen it not work somewhere else. But I thought Beyond Meat always did a tremendous job of recalibrating that category and making the product desirable and appealing to a wider group of people. So I think we can do the exact same thing with Beyond Tobacco.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a great example. So, you know, let's talk manufacturing. Let's talk about this manufacturing deal. You said it's hard to find commercial scale manufacturers for cigarettes.
There are manufacturers that exist, but I mean, for us, we wanted to find one that was a world-class manufacturer. So they have the capabilities to manufacture an extraordinary end product. And, you know, after a bit of due diligence and working with a number of different manufacturers, this is the one that we thought was going to be best positioned to be a partner for us. I think one thing that I want to say is you got to remember when it comes to capacity, because I think some of the questions that I get is in terms of capacity constraint. Mm-hmm. Now, the beautiful thing about a manufacturing line is if that you hit capacity, you just build another line.
Yep.
And if that hits capacity, you build another line. You don't need to reinvent it. You already know how to build it. You just pick off the machines in the line. It just becomes a function of money. Mm-hmm. So if you have the demand and people are buying the product, finding more capacity is not the difficult part. The difficult part is working with people who understand how to create a quality product. And that's what I think we've found. So if we get to the point, or when we get to the point that we need to expand, that's not really going to be an issue, mm-hmm. right? Just to give you a quick example, we know how to build a manufacturing facility within a shipping container and move it around the world. So again, it's not a function of know-how, it's just really a function of capital expenditure. If the business requires it, we'll do it. When it requires it, we'll do it. And that's something that we always have a keen eye on. And we're always doing our tracking, demand planning, figuring out what our pipeline needs to be. so that it doesn't run dry. So from our standpoint, I think we know how to manage that piece of the business extraordinarily well. And we're very fortunate to have the partner that we have in terms of manufacturing, because I think we're going to be able to get a tremendous product out to market.
Awesome. So, why is commercial scale production so important, and how can you know that's important if you haven't officially sold the product at retail yet?
Well, from the tests that we've done, I have no doubt that when we put it in mass market, people will like it, and a significant percentage of smokers will switch to it. When it comes to commercial scale manufacturing, there's a lot of consistency that comes with that. And when you have a mass market product, you need to ensure that the consumer experience is always the same. So you want to engage with someone that has the scale, that can grow with you, and that has the expertise in making sure that the product that comes off the line is the same on Tuesday as it is on Friday. Because the last thing you want to be able to deliver to a consumer is something that tastes different on Tuesday than it does on Friday, because then that's not really where they find comfort. Mm-hmm. Right? One of the reasons that people continue to smoke the brands that they do is because it gives them some comfort. They know that it's never going to taste like something else. Again, I go back to McDonald's. Doesn't matter what McDonald's you go to, the Big Mac's going to taste the same. So consistency is key. And also, as we start to grow, we want to ensure that our manufacturing partner also has the capabilities and bandwidth to grow along with us. And they do. So that's why it's a very important element that we wanted to iron out first before we got to market.
Great. So the manufacturer doesn't work with the base material at all, except to package it. Is that correct?
Yes. So our base material is blended in Nevada. So that's where we would take our organic base and run it through that proprietary process that we're applying for patent on. And then from there, it would be rolled into a cigarette format, packaged into a pack, put into a carton, packaged into a case, put on a pallet, and then shipped to the distributors. So there's a lot of science that goes into manufacturing a cigarette. A lot of people don't realize how complex that process is, again, which is why we wanted to work with someone that had the expertise in it, because they've already tested a number of different things and can help us on completing a product that we think the market will absolutely love.
Awesome. So you guys must have some pretty impressive bandwidth, having just gotten a 3.2 ton shipment of base material.
Absolutely. So I think it'll take us about less than 6 weeks for us to trim and prepare the material for refinement. We run it through all the steps, and then we transport it to the manufacturer. They'll have it rolled up, packaged, and ready to ship for distribution to our wholesale partners.
And tell me about this private placement you guys closed recently. What opportunities does that create for you guys in the near term?
Well, I think what it does is it helps us obviously get to market and prove that we have a winning formula for the market. So with that capital raise, we'll be able to start processing a significant amount of base cigarette material, get it to our manufacturing partners so they can start rolling it, fill the pipeline, and start doing the right deals with the right distributors and the right chains so that we can get the product to market in a very efficient and scalable way.
Awesome. So, everybody wants to know, when will Beyond Tobacco launch?
So we're aiming for middle of Q4. And with the process that we have in place now and all of the pieces that are sort of moving, I think we'll absolutely be able to hit that target.
So thank you so much, Seti. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for all of the updates, and the stock's already been doing awesome. So I look forward to having you back on with more updates, talk about your launch and everything. So
awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Always happy to be here.
All right, guys, that wraps up the video. Thank you so much for watching. And always remember, Departures Capital is for information, education, and entertainment purposes only. Don't buy or sell a stock because you heard it on here. Buy or sell a stock because you've done your research, you've done your thorough due diligence, and you make your own personal investment decisions for yourself. This video is not financial advice. We'll see you guys in our next video.